even a lot. We got these in Nebraska. Sometimes you get hundreds of them just hanging out at pumpkin pantry. I'm close enough now, you might actually attack me. Usually on the inside of their forearms is an O, like the O in Oakley. I can't see the inside of his, but I don't think he's got them. He's one of the yellow variety. Now he might, whoa! Whew! That was surprising. Highly aggressive. Highly aggressive. Especially when you back it into a corner. He don't want no problems and he don't want no fighting, but if I get close, he'll turn around. Oh, yes. Isn't he beautiful? Rishi. See if we can zoom in. That might be a bit much. About right there. Very cool. Just supersize that, and you can use it on Geonosis to sacrifice yourselves some Jedi. Just kidding. But I think one of the creatures in that movie that was supposed to kill Anakin and all them, I think it was based off one of these guys. Anyway, I accidentally tore up part of my quartz stuff, not on purpose though. This is some of the stuff with Leslie Snell. Part of the evidence that shows that she and several of the other predators that I was attempting to turn in all conspired to prevent me from turning them in. Later, sir. Be safe. Oh shit, I better grab my Mountain Dew. Thank you, ma'am. Anyway, you guys know why I started this channel. We got way too many people out here on the streets that are victims. 80% of us are out here because we were victimized into homelessness. Everything from rape and being molested as children to being beaten by alcoholic fucking parents to abusive spouses. Oh, she just put the praying mantis on my shoulder.
That'd be the extra view plan to be like, please don't keep them in front of us because our homeland.
All right, I don't see where you put. Oh, there he is on my shoulder.
Like, no, if I were video that, I'm off you. Not put him up.
Anyway, whoa. Most of the women out here, I mean, it's not just a matter of growing up with that. It's also the matter of when you get thrown out on the streets, they throw us out here with the predators. They throw us out here with people nobody wants because they got busted raping children and their own children in many cases. And then you put them out here with us. Somebody who's going to do that to their own kids isn't going to have any remorse about preying on women or smaller men out here. And they do, often.
North Star way to manger. South Foley Twitter and Ranger Rooter.
And it messes with people's heads. That kind of trauma doesn't go away. There's a lot of women out here that, you know, they start off as sane as anybody else. They're just overwhelmed. After years of being out here, the beatings, being choked out, you know, you start to lose part of yourself every time that happens. And it's not just the women. Men go through this too. But the reason we gotta point out the women in specific is because they're the ones people care about. Now it's just like...
Become prodigies.
Hmm?
That's how philosophers become prodigies.
Being abused?
Listening to the stars that make the gas noise. What do you see when you look at a telescope? First second. Eclipse, once in a lifetime moon, and
Anyway, one of the important things about being out here and trying to work together with your community is making sure that the people in your community are safe. You got to look at it differently. I mean, we keep doing this whole "it didn't happen to me, so it's okay," but the fact is, an affront of one of our rights is an affront against all of ours. When these people are out here being victimized and the other victims are looking away. Yes, ma'am. Oh, yes, ma'am. Un momento, por favor. I hope I didn't. Ah, here you go. Yes, ma'am.
For all UFOs, the legendary order. I pray that we're all saved here.
Well, I already told everybody years ago if they'd pay to have mine removed, I'd be fine with it.
Well, pray for your miracle with the snappy. Money insurance company. Life insurance policy. Farmer ordered some tomato sauce on the stove.
Now, my channel, it's for all the victims. It's for all the victims, regardless of their race, regardless of their skin color, regardless of their nation of origin, regardless of their gender, regardless of whether or not they're batshit fucking crazy. And here's why. People who are batshit fucking crazy are the easiest people to victimize because nobody believes them. Nobody ever believes them. Marcia Estrada touched on that. And yes, she, at the time of the recording that I made last, she'd been in mental health for 42 years. 42 years. 10 years of that, 12 years of that, I guess, she was qualified, and still is qualified, to diagnose schizophrenia. And she stated outright that I am not. Getting heard is not easy. It's hard enough when you're homeless. Now then you add the assumptions that go along with the tag of mentally ill and the assumptions of homeless people. And pretty soon, you've got yourself a recipe for a fucking disaster. Like that praying mantis back there. If I'd have backed that praying mantis up anymore, it would have got me. And I never been bitten by one. I've been caught by their hooks a couple of times, and although it didn't hurt, it was difficult to get it detached without hurting the damn thing. And I've been told that when they bite you, they bite a square hole out. But that's just what I've been told. I don't have any personal experience, and I've never seen anybody with a square hole from getting bitten by one, so I don't know. It does not sound pleasant. However, was I encroaching on its domain, or was it encroaching on mine? I encroached on it. I backed it into the corner. And when it defended itself, to the best of its understanding, tried to puff up and startle me, and it worked. It wasn't the puffing up, it was the fact that it looked like about an 8-inch wingspan right in front of my fucking face. Yeah, that startled the shit out of me. And I dropped my phone. I hope that's a true story, and I hope I didn't hallucinate that. If it's a true story, well, it's the very beginning of this video, so if it is a true story, you've already seen it. And if I imagined it, well, then there's nothing at the beginning of this video. There's no praying mantis at the beginning. And my phone doesn't get dropped. So I'm gonna, out of curiosity, I'm going to go back and look at this video at the very beginning after I get done making it, just to prove to myself that I'm not schizophrenic. Isn't that absurd? People think that if they keep on pounding it at me, it'll somehow make it true. No, it's still not true. You can say it 100,000 more times, it's still not going to be true. The fact that there are no less than 4 mental health specialists who are qualified to diagnose both schizophrenia and, delusions. And out of the 4 of them, none of them, not even one, says that I'm schizophrenic or delusional. And as the only one in the prisons who saw, see, here's the thing that's interesting about it. If somebody is called schizophrenic, well, if you observe them for about 2 weeks and see absolutely no signs of schizophrenia, they're not schizophrenic, and you can wipe that off the list. However, you have to see 4 months of those behaviors consistent in order to be diagnosed as schizophrenic. Well, I don't have video hallucinations. I don't have audio hallucinations. My difficulties with speech come from 2 things. The fact that I have no teeth, and the fact that my mouth does not work fast enough. Out of all of the doctors that saw me long enough to make such a diagnosis, none of them did. Not even one. That's pretty important to note. There's also the fact that none of my doctors agreed with me being there. All of them thought that it was inhumane treatment of a human being. Every single one of them agreed that I should have been taken to the state hospital where I would have had access to legal materials instead of being sent to the prison under the false pretenses of being schizophrenic and delusional. Now, out of all those doctors, the one that was the most peeved with the situation would definitely be Dr. Ted Hill. He is also an educator at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln. That's right, he's a mental health specialist in the mental health ward of the Lincoln Corrections Center. See, this is the thing. They put me directly into the mental health ward because they were told that I was schizophrenic and delusional. And Ted Hill, as soon as he realized that I was not delusional or schizophrenic, started trying to get me out of that ward. Unfortunately, the warden would not allow it because I kept on turning in his guards. I kept on turning it, well, her guards. It was Sarah Nelson. But I kept turning in their guards for threats, harassment, intimidation, assaults, denying me the right to legal access or legal materials. They did a lot. Now, the sexual assault by the guards in the Lincoln Correction Center That's something that still needs to be turned in. But it was one of a lot of assaults. Most of the assaults in there were not of a sexual nature. But when you have 6 guards hold you down and literally tear your clothes off of you by repeatedly yanking on them, intentionally, well, you know what parts they were harming when they were doing that. It is of a sexual nature. It was intending to do physical harm, and they did do physical harm. I tried to turn that in more than once while I was in there, and I was retaliated against each time. Predators don't like it when you tell on them, but also predators, they don't want to get in trouble. They go for the easiest victim. Like out here on the streets, the rapists, who is it that they're most likely to rape? That girl who's talking all sorts of crazy talk that everybody tries to get the hell away from and tries to go hang out somewhere that she's not. That crazy lady that's always screaming crazy shit. She's screaming that crazy shit because she gets raped over and over and over and over again. Some dude comes out here, he's all fucked up on meth and he just can't control his hormones. And there she is, off in some alley, screaming some crazy shit. Nobody fucking cares. They all want her to go away. They wish she'd just have a heart attack or something. Next week, it might be somebody coming out of the bar. Some guy fighting with his girlfriend and fucking he wants to either beat something up or fuck something. So she might end up with both. But who cares, right? Because she's crazy. That's what you guys tell yourselves. Well, she's crazy. She's crazy. Why is she crazy? How many times does she have her skull stomped in after being raped? How many times did guys think they'd choked her to death when they got finished and ran away? And now she's out here just screaming all sorts of crazy shit. The cops prey on that. They prey on how afraid she is, just like they do with the men. The men are not allowed to be afraid, are they? They're not allowed to be afraid. They have to be brave all the time. Well, let me tell you something. There is no such thing as bravery without fear. Because bravery is not the absence of fear, but standing in the face of it. I face my fears. And of course, when I have to make a strategic withdrawal, I do. Better to survive with an intact army, and I don't have an army. I've got me. I've got my wiles and I've got my ingenuity. And if I gotta stand up against the whole world, then God damn it, I'll do it. We're not at a point where I need to pick up a firearm to defend my loved ones. We're at a point still where intervention by law enforcement is what is needed. Intervention by law enforcement in this situation and arbitration is necessary. In my situation, That is what is necessary. We need to open lines of communication. And also, it needs to be understood that the victim needs to be heard first. The victim, not the officers, not the friends of my predators, but the victim. Also, there's a lot of people out here on the streets who are victims that they're never going to get heard. You get to hear Daniel when he talks about people assaulting him. Well, those assaults are legit. I've got at least half a dozen people altogether recorded talking about, well, the safety issues with Daniel. He's the one who cut his leg and I had to call 911 so he doesn't fucking bleed to death. Daniel, what I'm gonna do is, the guy whose window he broke, I'm going to give his name to the Department of Health and Human Services. No, I think that's actually something that should be turned into Dan. I might possibly try both, because I know this lady up here, I only want to overwhelm her with one at a time because I know how much work it takes in each. But also the thing about the quantity of evidence that I have, and also how fruitful it is going to end up being. They're probably going to assign multiple people to it. Now that might be just a pipe dream and me hoping beyond hope. That might even be, and I don't want to admit this, it might be a bit delusional to believe that the law enforcement community is going to do their jobs at this point. But it is their job. And now we do have several people willing to take a look. I also know that I've taken a look at the laws concerning it. They don't get to take all of my evidence permanently. What they're allowed to do is to take my evidence and make copies of it. The reason for that is because there are other pending cases that evidence is also a part of. So, one of the things about the evidence of multiple children being abused is that they can't. Let me give you an example. There's one lady in Chapel. She knew that her husband was molesting her daughter, and she didn't tell. Alright, there was an example I was going to make of that, but I had about 5 thoughts and ideas all hit me at once, so I forgot what it was that I was talking about. And that does happen. It doesn't mean that I'm confused or that I don't know what's going on. It means that there was a lot of stuff that all hit me at once. Sometimes I get that same thing going on with emotions. It's not like 5 or 6 thoughts that are really important that are also related to the situation that I'm talking about. Because with the emotional part of it, it is the same thing. It's a flood of all of that at once, but it's a flood of emotions. And we do have a lot of predators out here. About 81% of us are out here because of victimization. The additional 19%, basically 20%, I know I always say 20% and it's only 19. Well, that 1%, does it really make a difference? I mean, we're talking about 19%. That's almost 20%. And that's also nearly 1/5 of our population out here homeless. 1/5 of the population is people like Tim Beeson and Ted Bollinger and Andrew Witcher and Michael Albert. The worst part about all that is that all 4 of those nasty fucking child molesters have houses. None of them are homeless. Gracious, good Lord Almighty, right? Anyway, I don't just make accusations. I save evidence to back it up. Going to the police alone always results in bad shit happening when you're a disabled and homeless male. This time I got, 2 different people to actually listen to me, to take it seriously, and to agree to help me turn these things in. Now the lady up there at the child's welfare office, basically, I think basically all she does is make sure that that information is forwarded to where it needs to go. But not necessarily. And if I am asked to go testify in court, even if it's in the state that I am unsafe, I will go. And I will testify, even if it leads to me being arrested. Although, I'm pretty sure we can probably find some excuse to have me arrested either tomorrow or the next day. Just to make sure that predators do not have access to me. And that these other agencies do have access to me. Also, since we have not had any direct contact or issues with the sheriff's department here, I don't have any issues with sitting in jail in this county. I'm fine with that. Also, there's accumulated terror. You might ask what that is. You can go ahead, but I'm going to answer it anyway. There is a lot of stuff that has been done to me that terrified the fuck out of me. Well, I did those things back. And that's true. Not all of them, mind you. But a lot of these things that I got on here and I told you about the horrible things that people were doing to me. I did do those things back to them, some of them. I threatened violence against the people who threatened violence against me and my loved ones. That was pretty important. When I claimed that I would hurt people, well, in specific, it was only people who had hurt me and my loved ones. If you do it, I'll do it back. The problem is they know I got no teeth. My predators already know that I'm a good man. And the proof is in the pudding. They weren't able to entice me, so they had to play on my human nature. On the fact that I'm one of them dummies that, what do they call me? Captain Save-A-Ho? Funny thing is, I had men that I helped out call me Captain Save-A-Ho. Optimally, what would happen is that the information that needs to go to the FBI would be sent to them. Obviously, neither of the people that I'm going to be giving this stuff to have that access. So, I mean, that would basically be a pipe dream to hope for that. However, due to the fact that it is across many jurisdictions in many states, and due to the fact that there's human trafficking involved, yeah, that is the FBI that gets involved in that. They don't just get involved, they get heavily involved on the state level as well, and they get heavily involved on the local level as well, and they get to basically pull access to the resources that they want. Now, I told y'all from the very beginning, when I knew that Natalie Bollinger was dead, I let y'all know that the most important thing is giving Alicia Bollinger what she wants. Maybe she'll repent someday and tell the truth. Maybe she won't. But if Alicia Bollinger gets what she wants, maybe these other people leave my loved ones alone. Based on Alicia Bollinger's behavior, well, I'd say that locking me up is probably the safest thing for everyone. Am I in danger of snapping? Well, everybody's in danger of snapping, but I've already survived well past pretty much everybody else's fucking snapping point. So, well, we'll see. I might be able to go my entire life taking this level of abuse and never kill anybody. I'm fairly certain that if I play my cards right, I will never have to fire a gun in anger. I'm going to tell you something about if it's necessary for me to fire a firearm. That means, number one, somebody is trying to kill my loved ones. And number two, I've got a gun in my hands when it starts happening. Those two things are not likely to happen. I don't keep firearms, I don't carry firearms, and I don't own firearms. If there is a situation where somebody is shooting at my family or my loved ones, and somebody puts a gun in my hands, I'd like to say that I would not shoot in that situation. However, that's defense, that's not violence. That's not murder. I think the most pathetic part of all of this situation is when people want to call me a manipulator. I think it's pathetic that anybody should have to manipulate people into telling the truth. I think that's pathetic. Anybody who wants to talk to me about being a fucking adult, who wants to do shit like that, does not get to bitch as if they're a fucking adult. If you want the rules to be different for you than for everybody else, you don't have the right to tell anybody else whether or not they are acting like a child. If you're going to gang up on somebody and do everything in your power to prevent them from being heard while you're committing crimes against them, you're the worst kind of predator. Now, as far as Sheriff DaCosta and his deputies and the stuff that they pulled with Leslie Snell, the death nail for them is the civil paperwork where Leslie Snell outright lies repeatedly. It's my favoriteest part. Like, not only did she lie repeatedly, but her paperwork not only implicates her, it implicates every single one of these people who she lied about. See, through her job, her position with the Dual County Sheriff's Department, yes, she was involved in multiple cases. Her name was signed and her stamp was rendered on nearly all of my paperwork. So yes, she did have advanced knowledge of those situations, and she did indeed twist and manipulate it to the best. Bonjour. She did indeed twist and manipulate it and work together with Scott DaCosta to not only deprive me of the evidence of their wrongdoing, not hers though. That's the funny thing. Scott DaCosta, when he was trying to cover up his bullshit, there's something he forgot. Kind of like with Polly Olson, there's something he forgot. Well, that something he forgot with Polly Olson got her arrested. But at the end of the day, what it all comes down to is people taking a look. Now with Daniel, I gotta come back to him for a reason. With Daniel, yes, it's obvious that not all of his information is going to be useful, but that is not a reason for throwing it all out. If you guys been paying attention, a full 3/4 of what Daniel says is fully coherent and factual. Most of the time, like when he's talking about where he goes and flies the sign, that's exactly where he flies the sign, so that's definitely not a delusion. He knows that he put his foot through that window, that's not a delusion. Really, it's when it comes to the property ownership that he really starts going off the deep end. But does that mean that the crimes were not committed against him? Does that mean that nobody actually assaulted him? Oh, they absolutely did. And I said that they would. I explained to the sheriff that they would. Sorry, not the sheriff. I explained to the police sergeant about the safety issue with Daniel and them letting him right back out. I let him know about the assaults and the fact that, yeah, the homeless people already wanted to fucking beat the shit out of him because he's crazy, he's a weirdo. He's still a person, isn't he? And he's a perfect example of somebody being called mentally ill, and therefore it's perfectly fine to commit crimes against him. The sergeant that I spoke to, and it is recorded, he says to me that he went and spoke to the homeless camps, including Drew. I went and talked to Drew about it, and we recorded that as well. Yes, Drew and several others are recorded on my YouTube channel, talking about the safety risk for Daniel in that town, especially among the homeless. Now, since I told on some of them homeless people, well, at least I'm more hated than Daniel, and they're more likely to come after me. Although, when that asswipe gave me that cup full of Dr. Meth. Ooh. Daniel was with me. So there is that. Daniel doesn't do meth, and neither do I. So that's also something to note. The evidence there in Hood River shows negligence on the part of the police department. It also shows threats, harassment, intimidation. These tactics are used nationwide by the police against the homeless. Nothing personal, but they're homeless. That's the way everybody expects us to look at it. Oh, it's nothing personal. No, it's absolutely something personal. It's deep-seated hatred. Just like many law enforcement officers in the 1960s were inherently racist assholes who operated with impunity, including killing many black civil rights leaders. For many of the families of those black civil rights leaders, they will never get justice. But also, for many of them, they did. They did get justice. It just took decades for people to actually care. And even with all of the evidence that can be lost, stolen, and missing in a 20-year period, there was still enough residual evidence left over for convictions. There's also high-profile situations like Eichner and many other Nazi war criminals who, well, the Jews basically hunted down and systematically eradicated, but, well, how many years did that take? They were still finding Jews, or the Jews were still finding Nazi war criminals in the late 90s and bringing them to justice. I think it was probably around 97 they found a prison guard from Dachau, and I probably horribly butchered that name. For all of the quote-unquote mentally ill victims of today, many of whom are civil rights leaders in their own right, many of whom are fighting for their loved ones, many of whom are out here on the streets, many of whom will never be heard, most of which are dead. Our leaders die first. They get arrested on false charges and die in prison in many cases. Or they die in the act of saving a life. Or they die in the act of protecting your rights. Or they find him in a ditch, dead as a fucking doornail. Or they find him when the trash guys come and pick up the garbage. Or they find him frozen to a park bench. Fuck it, right? Who cares? Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper, and no victim left behind.